Welcome, friends. It is LSR Live, and today we are sprouting with Steve. We've got Pastor Steve with us to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is sprouting and microgreens and how to enhance your health simply, naturally. And Pastor Steve, you're kind of my go-to guy on this topic, the sprouting king, from my perspective. And I want to just start off with, how did you get into the sprouting? You're a pastor. Average people can get into this, not from a medical background. What drew you to the sprouting topic originally?
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Scott. It's been a while since we've connected and glad to do this. We've had some technical difficulties, but praise the Lord, we're up and running. So I'm 66 years old and I have been sprouting for over 40 years. When I was a teenager, before I became a believer in Jesus, during I call my BC days, my lost days in Southern California, in the Hollywood Hills area, I just got involved with drugs and the wildlife. But somewhere during that period, I had this conscientious conviction that I needed to do something good for my body in the midst of all the bad things that I was doing. And so I decided to start getting into sprouting. And I also went to a lot of health food stores around the North Hollywood, Studio City area. I started getting into eating healthy food at the same time that I was smoking marijuana. So, I was doing both, but I learned how to sprout, and I realized that sprouting was very good for my body. I was putting a lot of nutrients into my system, fresh, non-GMO, live, unsprayed salads that I was growing, and so I just got into it. I really can't explain it any other way than I think the Holy Spirit was working in my mind. Even in my dark days when I was doing all kinds of bad things, he impressed me, start doing something good. And then a few years later, I became a Christian. I started reading the Bible for the first time in my life, accepted Jesus as my savior. And so I laid off the bad habits, the heavy metal music and the nightclubs and the drugs and just the wild life, the concerts and the parties. But I kept sprouting. And I've been doing that for a long time, ever since I was a teenager. And it's a habit that I really like. I've learned how to do it. I'm growing a lot of things, especially in the winter when my garden is under snow up here in North Idaho. And it's just been a blessing to me. And I think I attribute some of the health that I have still. These days I'm down at the river near where I live, swimming every day, and I still jog and try to stay healthy. And I think sprouting and eating good, healthy microgreens has been a part of the health that I have. And I'm very thankful for what I do have and thankful to be on with you to talk about this topic.
Absolutely. And, folks, you did hear Pastor Steve mention the technical difficulties. If you lose me, put your questions in. You guys get to chat with Pastor Steve on how to most effectively do sprouting to improve your health. So that's kind of the background on it, but you actually teach people sprouting. Now, you don't encounter a lot of people do this and teach this. This is you guys' opportunity to give a listen to a little intro to that, and also what is the URL, Pastor Steve, for bringing people into your online community for Sprouting with Steve?
Sure. Yeah. It was a few years ago, a friend of mine and I decided that we wanted to make the knowledge that I had about sprouting available to people. So we teamed up together and put together a course called Sprouting with Steve. So the website is sproutingwithsteve.com. In the last few years, I've had numerous churches inviting me to come and demonstrate growing sprouts and microgreens. We have a Q&A. Have a slide presentation, and people just love it. And it's also been an outreach for the community. Churches have advertised in the area and invited people to come. And when it comes to things like gardening and sprouting, people from the community, they show up. And we've had a lot of great seminars. And so all of the information is really in our course, sproutingwithsteve.com, which teaches people how to grow simple sprouts and also how to grow microgreens, which are bigger than sprouts. They grow and they have the leaves that turn green through the sunlight that comes through the windows. And I teach people how to grow microgreens in soil and without soil. We have videos where I'm demonstrating how to grow these things, so they see me in my kitchen with my trays and my little jars and different things, and I show people, what to do, how to do it, and then they see them. The next, video is they're growing a little bit more, and so people just love it. I've gotten all kinds of testimonies from people that have written me and said that they have just learned so much through Sprouting with Steve, and now they're growing these salads that they like. And one lady wrote me and she said her husband had some severe neurological issues. And she said, once we got into sprouting on a regular basis, those issues just improved significantly. And that was, of course, very gratifying for me to hear. So it's a great topic. It's simple. It's something people can do, whether you have a green thumb or a black thumb, whether you have a little room or a lot of room, whether you have a little money or a lot of money. Once you know what to do, it's very, very simple to grow like lentil sprouts in 2 or 3 days. And so I can answer questions about all these things. So there's a question right there from Emma that says, I've never sprouted. Where should a beginner start? And should one consume slowly to build the appropriate gut biome? Thank you for your time. Well, thank you, Emma. That's an easy question for me to answer. As far as where should you start, this is what I recommend. You get a jar, and really you can use any jar. And this is a wide mouth mason jar. It's what people use for canning, and you don't have to have a jar like this. You can use any jar in your house. And this one has a particular sprouting lid that has holes on it. You can get these from Amazon. So the simple thing to do is start with lentils. So most people have access to lentils. You can get them in just about any grocery store. So buy a bag of lentils for $1, or if you have lentils in your pantry, then you fill up your jar about maybe an inch or so. And then I would recommend doing this in the evening before you go to bed. Put the lentils in, the dry lentils, whole lentils, and then you fill the jar up with water. And then go to bed. And in the morning, you will see that those lentils, most likely, they've always done this for me, they will double in size because they have now absorbed the water, some of the water, and they become active. So then what you do is you just pour out the water. Whether you have a little sprouting lid like this, you can even use your fingers if you don't have a lid, you can use a cheesecloth or a strainer, and then you just pour out all the water. Make sure all the water is out because you don't want the seeds growing in water. And so then what you do is you just put the jar on the side. If you want to get fancy, you can get a little one of these little doodads. It's a little sprouting holder, and you just put it on the sides so it'll drain if you left any water in there. You can just put it actually on the side of your sink, put it in a container, or don't do anything. Just get all the water out and just stick it on your kitchen counter or your bathroom counter or your laundry room counter or anywhere. You can do this anywhere. And so this is what I tell people. You give them a soak one time, give them a bath one time, and then you give them a shower twice a day. So you soak them once in the morning, you pour out all the water, and then in the evening, you put some water in and pour it out. And then in the morning, you put water in and pour it out. In the evening, you put water in and pour it out. In the morning, you put water in and pour it out. So you give them a bath once and then a shower twice a day, or even once a day. Lentils are probably fine. And then after 3 days, you're going to see those lentils growing right up your jar. And after 3 days, you're going to have a whole jar full of fresh, organic, non-GMO, no sprayed, living lentil sprouts. And they're very mild. They're kind of like tofu. Whatever you add to the tofu, that's the way the tofu tastes. So then you just pour it right into your salad. I like to mix it with my granola. You can put it with your cereal. And literally 3 days, this is all it takes. And it only takes, seconds a day. So just grab the lentils, put them in, soak them overnight, pour the water out, rinse them twice a day. In 3 days, you'll have lentil sprouts. And I've shared this with many, many people in their homes. And if I'm there for a few days, like if I'm holding a seminar, uh, within 2 or 3 days, they'll have sprouts right there. They love it. So that's the best way to get started. I don't think you need to really slowly build up your gut, with this, because I don't think it's going to hurt you in any way. And you can start out with a little bit and then, eat more. If you eventually grow them in your jar and then you decide that you don't want to eat them all, right away, just stick them in your refrigerator. Lentils, sprouts will last for a couple of weeks. And it's the simplest thing. It just takes seconds a day, and you can put a lot of nutrients in your body with lentil sprouts.
If you were to create a time investment and cost to nutrition ratio,
Hmm.
I bet you this is among the best there is, isn't it? I mean, these are
Oh yeah,
superfoods, if
it's
you will. I mean, tell us about the nutrition boost you get out of sprouting and microgreens, if you'd like to talk about that as well.
sure. Yeah, all you have to do is Google health benefits of growing sprouts, nutritional profile in lentil sprouts or broccoli sprouts or alfalfa or clover or radish. So those are some of the main sprouts that people use. So just to clarify, a sprout, like what I just described with lentil sprouts, a sprout is technically defined as a little seed that is now activated and growing, and it has a little tail, which is the root. So that's a sprout. Now, if you grow them bigger so that they start sprouting leaves, that's considered to be a microgreen or a small green. And you can grow sprouts in jars. There's different way to grow them. Then you can grow your microgreens in little trays. I've got a whole bunch of trays that I use. So here's it's a sprout garden, and it's got a little tray on the inside here. So you grow your broccoli or alfalfa or clover in here until it comes up. And you can also you can stack these, so you can do mung on the bottom, broccoli on the top, next one, and alfalfa, and you can just go right to town and grow these. And there's all kinds of ways to do this, and that's what my course is about. It's about teaching people simple methods, and I demonstrate that so they know what to do, they know where to get their supplies, that they learn the little tips and what not to do, what to do. And Scott, it's been a good habit and a blessing to me for a long time, and I'm thankful for sprouts. It's about the cleanest form of food that you can eat, and yes, the expense ratio versus the benefit ratio is really off the charts. And if you get into a habit of doing this on a regular basis, you will feel a difference, and I do.
And you don't, this isn't like your main diet. You're not mostly eating sprouts and microgreens, right? Like
No,
what fraction of
no,
the
I
actual
do.
food
Yeah,
on your plate?
right. Yeah, lots of people ask me that. You don't just live on sprouts, do you? No, I don't. I do eat other foods just like, a lot of people do. I try to be healthy about my food choices, but sprouts is in addition to my diet. And I'll just show you. Here's a bag. I don't know if you probably can't see this, but this is a bag of buckwheat groats, white shelled buckwheat. I bought them at a health food store nearby, and it just took me 2.5 days to grow these. You can't really see them, but there's a lot of little sprouts here. These are so. All I did with these was I put them in a colander, and I put them in a container like this. I put the buckwheat groats in there, and I filled it up with water for about 15 minutes. That's it. And then I poured out all the water, and then I let them sit here in this little colander for a day, and then I put it under my sink and I sprinkled some water on top of it. I did that, I think, once a day. And after about 3 days, all these little buckwheat groats have all these little tails, and they're done. And so it's got a kind of a nutty taste. And what I do is I take these and I put them in my cereal, or I'll just eat it as cereal with a little maple syrup and some raspberries and blueberries, which I've got growing in my gardens right now, and it's delicious. So that's another option, is to grow buckwheat groats and make them into sprouts.
As
So I don't know
cereal,
if we
as
lost you,
cold
Scott.
cereal.
Oh yeah, there you are. Yeah, so cold cereal, it's
It's a
great. I,
delight.
I really I like doing this with sunflower seeds. I like buckwheat groats. I like lentils. And to be honest with you, during the summer months, which now we're in the end of July, I don't do a lot of sprouting or growing microgreens because my garden, I've got a big row of kale and lettuce, and I've got tomatoes. So I'm out in my garden during the spring and the summer. But once the fall comes and it gets cold or the snow comes down, I'm growing these all winter. But even in the summer, I will grow buckwheat groats or lentils sometimes to add to my cereal in the morning. And that's just the habit that I've gotten into, and it's a very healthy habit. It's good for me. So I don't know if you've got any more questions coming in from people, and you I know you're not in the Antarctic, but you are frozen on my screen. So it's amazing to me, Scott, in the midst of the world of AI and cryptocurrencies and all of the high-tech things that are happening these days, that we still sometimes have technical difficulties when we're doing a live program teaching people things that are important to their health. So hopefully we'll be able to resolve this. You were frozen just a minute ago, but if you have some more questions, and if you see questions coming in, I've got my phone here. You can actually text me if you have any questions. So, okay, broccoli sprouts there from Susan D. Yes, broccoli sprouts are, broccoli is very, very healthy. It's got a nutrient in it called sulforaphane, which has been demonstrated to be very good to fight cancer. So I do grow broccoli sprouts. There's different ways you can grow them. You can grow them in, well, one way is to grow them in jars. So this is the simplest method. You put a little bit of seeds in here and then you soak them. But with broccoli seeds, I wouldn't soak them overnight. I would soak them for maybe just 3 hours because they're little seeds. Soak them during the day and then pour all the water out. Make sure it's all out. And then you follow basically the same method as the lentils. So you give them a little bath once and then a shower once or twice a day. You don't want them to dry out, but you don't want them to be too wet. And then you just let them sit on the side. Now with broccoli, you do want to grow them in a cool room. I don't recommend growing sprouts in a house that has no air conditioning. So especially if you're doing this over the summer, make sure the room is cool, and then you just keep rinsing them once or twice a day, and then the broccoli sprouts will start growing up. And once they grow up, with broccoli sprouts, I like to keep the jar in the dark, like under a cabinet, because once the little leaves start growing in the jar, they're sweeter if they're yellow, if the leaves are yellow. Once they start greening up, they're not as sweet. So I prefer just doing it that way, and then you put them in your refrigerator. So that's one way to grow broccoli sprouts. Another way is to use one of these trays. This is called Sprout Garden, and the way I would do it with this is I would take a spray bottle and I would spray the bottom of my tray so it's moist, and then I would sprinkle the broccoli seeds on here and try to make them even so they're not on top of each other, but you have a nice layer of seeds. And then you take your sprayer and you give them another good little spray so that they're moist, and then you cover this. And maybe after 12 hours, you lift it up and give them another little spray. And then another one after another 12 hours or 14 hours, 18 hours. So the idea is keep them moist, but don't drown them and don't let them dry out. And after 3 or 4 days, you'll see those broccoli sprouts are starting to grow. And then once they get to the top of this lid, then I take the top off, and then I leave them in front of the window, not in direct sunlight, but close enough, and then they'll green up. And then you'll have a nice tray full of broccoli, what they call it. This will be a microgreen. If you just grow it in the jar, it's a sprout. But if you let it grow bigger, it's a microgreen. And I've used these trays so many times. I've grown all kinds of things in these Sprout Garden green trays, and they're fantastic. easy to do. And in my course, like I said, Sprouting with Steve, I walk you through everything so you can see them, you see them growing. And so it's very practical. You're back,
Beautiful.
Scott. You're not
Well,
frozen anymore.
I dropped a question in the chat on YouTube in case you lose me again. So Lawrence, bring that up
Okay.
if you lose me. But my question I didn't put in the chat, I can ask live with you. And you guys who are watching this,
Sure.
interact with Pastor Steve. He's all yours. You got me zipping it pretty much today. So throw your questions in
I'm
there
here.
about and microgreens. And my question too is about your ministry. You got your shirt with White Horse Media. I know that's your main gig. The sprouting is kind of a passion, a hobby, a side gig. But also, what's the latest news with your ministry, White Horse Media? What are you guys all about, first of all, and then what's the latest?
Yeah, there's a lot of new news. So I guess my first hat, Scott, that I wear is my husband hat with my wife, Kristen, and my kids, my dad hat. And then I have a health hat. And then I have a White Horse hat. And so White Horse Media is a ministry in Priest River, Idaho. We've been operating here for about almost 15 years. We have a studio. We have a team of people that we work with that produce programs. I write books, and most of those programs deal with, they all deal with the Bible. We're a Bible-based Christian media ministry, and a lot of our programs deal with prophecy and end time issues, the book of Revelation. That's really my field. I travel, I give seminars, I write books. We have a big YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type in White Horse Media. There's over 10 million views on our YouTube channel. We're on radio programs, TV programs. I do podcast interviews. So we do a lot. And the Lord has blessed us phenomenally. And really, the latest news is that my family is getting ready to move to Tennessee. Actually, my wife is already there. My daughter's there. My wife's parents are there. My wife's parents bought a house, and they're all in the Chattanooga area. And my daughter's going to be starting school as a freshman in college at Southern in the near future. And so White Horse Media, the ministry, which has been in this building, actually on my property, my 5 acres that I in Priest River, actually just vacated this building and moved to a house about 10 minutes from here. And this just happened. The moving truck came Monday. And so they're getting their desks set up, their offices, the shelves and everything. So the ministry is moving because the ministry has been on my property in this big building for 14 years. And the cloud is lifting from my tabernacle and it's leading me to Tennessee. And there's a lot of different reasons for this, not just my daughter, many reasons, but she's a big part of that. And so anyway, that's what's happening. White Horse is just getting relocated in its new building. It's going to have a new studio. We have our staff there. We still receive contributions that people give to help us with our expenses and keep our ministry going. When I get to Tennessee, I will continue to be the speaker director of White Horse Media. I've already got different recordings lined up. I'm heading to Tennessee in a little less than 2 weeks to see my wife and my daughter. And there's a studio down there that has a regular podcast, and I'll be joining them. And there's lots of opportunities for me to speak in churches in the area. I'm going to continue to write books and travel as much as I can. Still going strong at 66, and I'm not retiring. And so, but White Horse will continue in Priest River, Idaho, and I will be in Tennessee. But with all the technology these days, it's easy for us to remain connected. And so that's the latest with White Horse Media. So let's see. I don't see you. I don't know if you're frozen again. I also have a new book coming out. As I mentioned, I have a health hat. I have a new book coming out. It's called Be Wise with Your Money in These End Times. And it deals with the whole issue of finances and saving and giving and tithes and offerings and developing an emergency fund, getting out of debt, and also investing once we've got other ducks in a row so that we can grow our money to help our families and to help God's work. So that is coming soon. Okay, let's see. Here's a question from Goran Highlander. Hello, what are the main mistakes when growing sprouts and microgreens? How to recognize when they are bad? Thank you. Good question. As I mentioned a little bit ago, probably one of the biggest mistakes is to grow them in a warm room, because then they can go bad easier. You'll know when they go bad because they don't smell good. So I will, when I'm growing something, I'll smell it, and if it smells fine, it's fine. Um, another mistake that people make is they don't start sprouting because they think it's too complicated, but that's not the case. It's simple once you learn what to do. Other people think, well, it's too expensive. I've got a tight budget right now, but once you learn how to grow lentil sprouts, you can buy a bag of lentils for probably $1 in a grocery store. And so one of the main mistakes people make is that they don't get started. Um, Sometimes seeds are not good seeds, and they go bad because they've been sitting for a long time and they don't sprout well. But that doesn't happen too often. If you get your sprouts from a good, reputable place, or your seeds, chances are you won't have that problem. So where do I get the green container from? Well, this is just a regular, I think it's a quart mason jar. And but this is basically anywhere you can find canning jars. This is a wide mouth mason jar, and the sprouting lids, I get mine on Amazon. You can get a whole bunch of them for just a few dollars, not very expensive. But I mentioned, if you don't have this kind of a jar or a lid, you can still improvise by growing sprouts in many different kinds of jars. Any jar that'll hold water, you can do it. So there's, as they say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Sorry if you're a cat lover, but there's lots of ways to grow sprouts, and that's just one way.
That's a lot healthier than eating cats. But I think the question
Yeah.
might have been about the green container to your right, just to the side of the jar with the green lid, the
Oh,
one that you were sprinkling
okay.
your
I'm
broccoli
sorry.
seeds on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, this I didn't. I thought of the green and the lid.
Yeah.
So yeah, the green container. You can get this on Amazon. It's called Sprout Garden. In my course, I direct people to True Leaf Market, which is in Utah, which is where I get all my seeds, most of my seeds, and they have sprouting supplies. So you can get this Sprout Garden. That's what it's called. It's stacking trays. So it's not hard to find online. You have to spend a little bit of money, but not a lot. And so, yeah, that's where I get them. There's no secret source. You just have to go online and find out, where do I get my sprout gardens or my glass jars?
Yeah, the value of your course, Pastor Steve, is it's the step by step. Like, okay, I think I kind of got it. That's how I generally walk away
Yes.
from. And somebody who's more adventurous, confident, might be like, "Sure, let's give it a try." Somebody else, can you walk me through it? I need you to just hold my hand a little bit. My first time sproutingwithsteve.com. So, I want to share a quick story while I actually am getting through about your ministry, White Horse
Okay.
Media.
Yes.
I don't know if I think I've told you this before. I don't know if I've ever told you on screen, but I used to not understand Bible prophecy at all. And I was at a church, they had a library, and they had all these different books that you can just take, just a church library. And somebody had stuck one of your sharing books in there, and I'd never heard of Pastor Steve Wohlberg. I didn't know anything about Revelation or Daniel, and it was called Antichrist Chronicles by Steve Wohlberg, White Horse Media. And I was like, I'm interested in, I know Jesus Christ. What is this Antichrist? I hear all these rumors and people like speculate online, although there wasn't much of an online back then. This is about 25 years ago. I read that book and it was so clear. Pastor Steve, God has given you the gift, and I give him the praise because you have an ability to teach people, not just sprouting and microgreens, but eternal truths from his word. Prophecy, just systematically, clearly, simply laid out that
Mhm.
anybody can understand. And that book was pivotal in my understanding because I had heard this. A friend of mine was attending some Bible prophecy seminars, and this very same truth, he was like, "Oh, I know who the Antichrist is." And I was like, okay. And then I encountered your book right around that same time. You were going to show us some books?
Yeah, and praise the Lord, Scott. I'm glad that the Lord used me to help your life, and that's what life's all about. And yeah, so we have, like I mentioned, prophecy is really my forte. So we have Approaching Armageddon that deals with the end times. This is one of our popular books. We have a book on Israel and the end of the world, which these have been flying off the shelf because of the Middle East conflicts. And another one on Revelation 17, the bloody woman and the seven-headed beast, going through the prophecy of Revelation chapter 17. So yeah, this is what I do most of the time, is talk about prophecy. But I also have my little book called Sprout Power. It's a little tiny book that deals with teaching people how to grow sprouts. And I've got my course. And as I mentioned, I have a finance book coming out to teach people about good stewardship, because money is something none of us, we all have to deal with, and we need to deal with it wisely under God's leadership. So I've branched out into different areas, and just, doing the best I can by God's grace to lift up Jesus and point people to the cross. And part of living a Christian life and getting ready for eternal life is to try to be as healthy as we can in this life, so that we can help more people as long as we can. So that's how health and spirituality come together. And so our minds can also be as clear as they can, so that we can discern the devil and resist his temptations, and discern the providence of God in our lives. So they're all big topics. So it looks like you're okay. Pastor Steve, another question. Can you give a few examples of some flavors to expect from different seeds sprouted? E.g., is something more nutty or bitter, sweet? Hope that makes sense. Thanks, Pastor Steve, Scott, and team. Yes, that's a perfect question. So sprouts and microgreens have a wide variety of flavors, just like what you grow in your garden has a wide variety of flavors. So lentils are more mild, kind of earthy, and they take on more the flavor of the seasoning that you use. Another microgreen that I like to grow in the green trays, in these little green trays, is purple Rambo radish. So I get these from True Leaf Market. I put a little bit of water here, sprinkle my seeds on, spray them again with a little spray bottle, and then cover them and uncover the lid maybe twice, maybe 3 times a day, and just keep them moist. And they grow up, and you'll have just a big crop of purple radish. And they've got a real kick. They're kind of spicy, and I don't really actually like radishes, but I love radish sprouts. So I put them in my salad to have a little kick. Sunflower seeds taste like sunflower seeds. When you grow them as a sprout with a little tail, they add sort of a nutty flavor. Buckwheat groats, as I mentioned, they're kind of mild and nutty, just like a nut. Buckwheat lettuce, which I grow as a microgreen, it's a mild lettuce, which is delicious. So let's see what else. There's peas, which taste like peas. You can grow peas as a sprout in a jar, and you can grow them in a tray, and you grow them up with peas. I also typically will grow them in soil. I don't grow them as a microgreen without soil. So I put a little bit of dirt, about a ½ inch of dirt, in a tray like this, and I sprinkle the peas on there, and I water them so they're nice and soaked in, but not too much. And then I cover them, and I take the lid off every 12 hours or so, or maybe 24 hours, and then keep them moist. And the peas will just grow right up, and you'll have a beautiful crop of pea microgreens. They're very easy to grow, and they taste sweet, just like peas. So all kinds of different flavors. You can experiment and see what you like. I've got the ones that I like to grow a lot: buckwheat, sunflower, things like that. Alfalfa, clover. Clover is very mild. Where can we get organic seeds? You can get them mostly at a place that sells sprouting seeds. True Leaf Market has both organic and non-organic. I think organic is probably better, but the main man at True Leaf Market, we discussed this once, and he said that he doesn't really think it makes a lot of difference with a seed, whether it's organic or not, because the plant, even if the plant has been sprayed and it's not organic, the plant puts its best energy in the seed. And so when a plant creates a seed, there's not a lot of chemicals that get into the seed from the plant, maybe just a little tiny bit, but not much. And then when the seeds begin to grow, the chemicals don't grow in the seed, but the nutrients do. That's the miracle of growing seeds. So vitamin E, vitamin C, all kinds of different micronutrients multiply and grow to make the plant, but the chemicals don't grow. So if you're a purist and you want to just make sure that you don't, eat anything that's got chemicals in it, then by all means go organic. It is a little more expensive, but your conscience will have to be your guide. Some people ask me a lot, what about water? What kind of water should we do? Well, if all you have is access to is tap water, use tap water. It's not the best for you, but you're still going to get a lot of benefits from growing sprouts in tap water. But if you have access to, reverse osmosis or good well water or some kind of filtration system, you're always going to be better off with less chemicals for sure. So, okay, next question, Rigoran, regarding proper food combining. When we eat sprouts and microgreens, would you recommend eating them alone or combining them with other food? I eat them in my salads. So mostly, I do combine them with other things. I don't just eat only sprouts, as Scott asked me a little while ago. So I put my lentil sprouts in my granola, my oatmeal. I put buckwheat with some kind of grain cereal. I mix that in there. And it's just part of my meal. You can use alfalfa sprouts or clover, add them to sandwiches. Most of the way I eat sprouts is salads. I'm a big salad guy. I'll have a big salad. And especially in the winter, when I'm growing all my microgreens, I might have some sunflower, some buckwheat, some purple rambo radish, some avocado, some alfalfa, some lemon, some seasoning. And I just have this big salad. And that's part of my lunch. Whatever else I eat that salad. So I've never had a problem with mixing sprouts with other things. I typically don't cook my sprouts because you will lose, or steam them because you'll lose nutrients. I just eat them raw, mostly in my salads. That's my habit.
Now, since I've only
Hey,
caught like
Scott, you're back.
half of your, no, I have a question, but maybe you already addressed it. Do you ever throw them in smoothies?
Okay. I typically don't, but a lot of people do. A lot of people do. So I
Yeah.
also like to juice. And this morning I had a nice big glass of carrot juice with a cucumber from my garden and some tangy Oregon grapes that are growing around my backyard. I put them all into my Omega 8000 juicer, and I had a nice glass of, of that combination. Lemon is also good to add. So some people, they use like a Vitamix or some kind of good blender, and in the mornings they just pile a bunch of greens and almond milk or whatever they put into their smoothies, some fruit, strawberries, raspberries. And it certainly would be good to add some sprouts to that smoothie mix. You're just adding more nutrition, but that's not something that I normally do. The juice that
Yeah.
when I do juice a microgreen, it's typically wheatgrass. So I do have a wheatgrass juicer. I didn't bring it right here with me, but it's just designated for wheatgrass. So you grow the wheat seeds, hard red winter wheat seeds, and you grow them into grass, cut the grass, put them in the juicer, and you get this liquid that is green and very potent. So you can't drink a lot of that stuff or you're going to throw your body into a detox. So, but it's very
Well,
good. So that's what I do.
I know what you're talking about. That is for the strong-willed among us.
Yeah, that's
Hey,
right. So
Lawrence,
I typically add a little
in
grape
case,
juice. I add a little grape juice to my wheatgrass.
hmm, just talking to the producer, Lawrence, in case I'm off, when Pastor Steve finishes his last thought or answers his last question, you can just cut the program. So right now, I want to plug our producer and I want to mention the next program, but then we can continue with any questions that are coming into the chat. You guys load them up there. Pastor Steve will answer your questions about microgreens and sprouting. And then also thanks to our producer, CDN. Thank you, Jeremy and Lawrence, for putting on this program. A little early plug for you here this time. From likes to lives change. Scan that QR code to follow them. Now, I've done this so many times, I feel like I'm supposed to say bye to you now, but we're not saying bye, actually. And do we have our guest for next week? Do we have that promo? If not, we'll just move right back to the questions, Lawrence. And Pastor Steve, while we're waiting for that, if there aren't any on the screen yet, I want to ask you, just from your perspective, you teach on Bible prophecy and you teach on health. Do you also teach not just spiritual preparedness for the last days, which is the most important central thing that we can do in our lives, but are there any practical measures that we should be taking, not necessarily, or probably not from your perspective, you tell us, that we are preparing like for?
Okay, Scott, you cut out that last. So I think I understand what you were saying. I think there are certain things that we can do that are beneficial. I think living in the country, having a garden, having a pantry, things like charcoal are good for you. And if you run into some kind of an emergency situation, I think it's good to have some supplies, although I don't think that, when the final times come, that we can rely on that. We're going to ultimately be relying on God and on His taking care of us when things get really bad, which they will. But the good news is it's going to get good after that. So I tell people sometimes in front of an audience, I'll say, do you want the bad news or the good news? And I'll tell them the bad news is that this world's going to get worse. But the good news is that on the other side of the bad news, it's going to get so good that we can't imagine. We can't even imagine what the kingdom of God is like for those who choose to be with Jesus and with God and to be on His side. So, and while we're here, let's do what we can, but ultimately we need to trust the Lord. So, another question here. I was wondering how much protein is needed per day for the body. Not as much as people think. People have been, I believe, they've been programmed by the meat and dairy industry to think that you've got to have meat and dairy in order to get enough protein for your body's needs. I don't believe that. Actually, everything that's growing and living has protein. Yes, there's protein in meat and dairy, uh, but there's also protein in plants, and there's a lot of protein in beans. I just had some garbanzo beans this morning. I eat beans on a regular basis. Different kinds of legumes. There's a lot of protein in lentils, a lot of protein in sunflower seeds, and in nuts. And so, if you eat if you eat a balanced diet of fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables, and add beans, you're going to get plenty of protein. And the idea of a protein deficiency is pretty rare, if it's seen at all, at least in America. So if you get enough calories, you're going to get enough protein.
Yeah, I concur with that. And I actually did a video on protein. You guys should email me, scottritzema@gmail.com. I'll send you the video that we did over at Belt of Truth on the protein myths and how to understand what is a complete protein. Do I have to eat a complete protein in one food or at one meal? God gave everything we need in the Garden of Eden from the earth to sustain us, and not just that we would survive, but thrive. So thank you for that answer, Pastor Steve, and thank you for the question. I can't remember. The Watchman is the one who asked that. I believe you have one more question, right, Lawrence? Oh yeah.
Okay,
How do
where
people
to
buy your
buy
books?
your Yeah, they can get them from White Horse Media. Whitehorsemedia.com is our website. We have a store. They can just click store. They can browse. They can see topics on the side. They can type in different topics they're interested in the search field. So that's a simple way they can order them online. On our store, on our website, they can also call. We have an 800 number, 878 Bible, 782-4253. So we're easy to find, and people that don't, have access to these things, we do have the books on Amazon as well, a lot of them, but Whitehorse Media is a great place to get them, and that helps our ministry too.
Absolutely. I recommend people head over there, be a part of what White Horse Media and Sprouting with Steve is all about. And Pastor Steve, as a pastor, I'm sure you'd do the honor to close us in prayer.
Sure, of course. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Heavenly Father, thank you that the technical challenges have not been something that have stopped this recording, this program, this event. And we just pray. I want to pray for all the people that have tuned in and will tune in, watching the recording, that your Holy Spirit will speak to their hearts and help them in their lives, help them with their health, give them skill to learn how to sprout and to build up their immune systems and their bodies, and also give them a desire for spiritual things, to follow Jesus, to read the Bible, to look forward to heaven, and to stand against the evil one and his forces that are trying to bring us all down. Lord, bless CDN and Scott and his family and my family and all the families that are represented